Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 14 of the anime series Arslan Senki, or the Heroic Legend of Arslan. And we're pretty much picking up right where we left off after a 13.5 episode that I didn't bother covering because it was just a recap and everything like that. With the Sindarin invasion overtaking or attempting to overtake Peshawar as Arslan and his posse are therein. What I find absolutely fascinating is the parallels between this second Prince Rajendra, who is leading the Sindarin faction. He's kind of out of his element, and he's really riding by the seat of his pants and just saying, you know, let's do this now. Just because simply Pars is in such a state of disarray with this whole, Lusitania overtaking Ecbatana and all this kind of stuff that's going on. Arslan being on the chase and people coming after him, gunning for him. It's just a mess, and he wants to take, sort of penultimate advantage of that fact. But you have his sort of nearest and dearest, in command figureheads, if you will, telling him, well, we're kind of no better off at the moment. You got you, but then you got Gadivi, your brother, who is supposed to be ascending to the throne because he's, as basically Rajendra puts it, just like a couple weeks or months older than him or whatever it is. And so there's some infighting going on that level that is somewhat matched in a way, a parallel, as I say, to what's going on with Silver Mask and Arslan, respectively. And you're seeing sort of an answer to this. Narcissus and Daryun are having some concerns over Arslan's mental state, his sort of state of mind, with all of that, bomb drop information that was passed on to him by Bahman in his dying moments. But actually, Arslan, while he may be confronting that internally and thinking about that and weighing that, his primary concern is being there for the soldiers, his subjects really, who are going to have to go onto the battlefield. He feels like he should be part of them, otherwise it's breaking the faith. Any sort of faith and support, basically, that he could offer to his men by just being there. And you have Narcissus and Daryun very much schooling him on the idea that, look, you don't have to be part of every single battle. There's more to this leadership than just being on the battlefield as sort of a, flag post or whatever it is. The leadership, and your command over it all, you can stay here and do that effectively. And it's kind of because they want to protect him, but it's also because they do have this, just profound respect for him. The fact that he would show concern for his, subjects, as I say, his soldiers, his armed force that is going up against the Sindarin invasion, in this such a way, he's that much more a compelling and nurturous sort of leader, that is to say, when he would step up to essentially ascend the throne and become a king, he would be a very benevolent sort of, king among his men. You have at one point in the episode, Rajendra even reacting to the fact that Arslan's talking about his posse as friends, not as subjects, people under him. He sees them as equals for what they bring to the table. He doesn't think himself higher among them. And as I've talked about several times through the course of covering this series, that is what makes us champion and feel for Arslan, because he is truly, a beneficial benefactor. He's very much human, and he's not let this idea of command and power and conquering get the best of him. It isn't even, sort of, he's thinking of what leadership should be, his leadership role should be, as making lives benevolent through and through for all who would be sort of, air quotes, under me, whom I would reign over. It wouldn't be reigning over and controlling. It'd be, making things as beneficial and helpful and just good as possible for the people that would fall under his jurisdiction, if you will. And Narcissus and Daryun, the fact that they recognize this, and time again, the characters around Arslan are realizing this, they very much eagerly answer the call to action against this Sindarin invasion. And I love how, you see like Kishward is in there, Alfred and Elam are integral to this plot that has to do with these three sort of given aspects of how to win a war that, Narcissus talks about. Terrain's advantage being one of them, where basically, it's because they are so familiar with this area, with this region, land, they can sort of, as we see them surrounding the Sindarin this invasion army and everything like that, and Rajendra and all that stuff, they can easily command and sort of pinpoint the direction, change the tides of the course of this battle that's unfolding. Also using something called Heaven's Time, Narcissus refers to it as, which just is a sort of recognition of the season. The entire Sindarin force is used to more so operating in like southern climates and more tropical climates, so they're not going to be necessarily prepared in all the traveling they've done, and it's starting to snow, for this wintry mountainous sort of surrounding. So those two things are prime advantages, as Narcissus points out, and then it all comes home with people's harmony. And I love this. I mean, it kind of calls back to a scene in the Mel Gibson film The Patriot, where they essentially, from very, very far away, they create these dummies seemingly wearing the enemy factions, sort of uniforms, the flags they're waving and everything. And that's essentially what they do. They know about the infighting between Gadivi and Rajendra, and they know that Gadivi, if he figured out, Rajendra was trying to move against him, sort of a precursor to where we leave the episode, that he'd be none too pleased, and he'd probably, there would be a war breaking out, infighting, as I say, in the Sindarin's whole country, the countrymen against countrymen scenario. And so you have on this hillside just a bunch of dummies made up to look like they are Gadivi's armed forces, his army, and he's going to be turncoating in a sense on Rajendra, fellow countrymen, brothers against brothers and everything, that whole thing again, exploiting that notion, but completely false, just to unnerve the Sindarin army and lead them to essentially this frozen over lake where, under the weight of them all, it crashes through, and Rajendra is only just then captured by this smart sort of chess match game between, of course, Narcissus, who has orchestrated it all. But like I say, you have Alfred and Elam really stepping and rising to the challenge, stepping up. And it's for that Rajendra is then captured and brought before Arslan, who, being that beneficial and, showing care and concern, that sort of leadership role that he's taken upon himself to put forth, he basically, has Daryun go and slice the ropes they had him tied up with. And he's like, look, I just want to chat. I want to talk to you. I want to make a proposition for you. Let's work together, essentially. Alliance is the word of the day. Not before, of course, you have the big feast, and they're drinking the wine, and you have Ferengis coming in there. And this makes Rajendra all excited that she's going to be getting in there and having some wine with them. And I just drop dead laughter as soon as you hear this whistle, and here comes sliding in between them Giev, and that made me lose it. I watched that several times, just that sequence alone, because it was so damn hilarious. And then, of course, in answer to which, Rajendra was like, let's have a sort of drinking contest and see, how long it takes people to get drunk. Giev actually bottoms out first, Rajendra becoming sort of the soon second, being very much, I can't have any more wine, when Ferengis is like completely stone-faced, here, you want some more, And, but then again, we pick up with that alliance theme, that conversation between Arslan and Rajendra, and it seems like he's reluctant to go along with it, and he's like, oh, you're going to threaten me, you're going to try to force my hand. And this is when, of course, Elam, Alfred, and Narcissus walk in, and they let the bomb drop. Hey, man, your people already know. We basically decided to tell them that you're already on your way to go confront your brother. The infighting is coming to a head, and you've made this sort of, alliance already with Arslan. It's going to be mutually beneficial, and, you're going to be working together in tandem. And so, in answer to which, if they can secure Rajendra's, ascension to power, ascension to his throne, the throne of Sindura, he will then be obligated to, sort of pimp out his own army, his own armed forces, and help Arslan in maybe retaking Ecbatana, staving off Lusitania, whatever it is. And we see that actually amidst all of this, Silver Mask himself, he hasn't quite left the scene yet. He's actually going to leave as we catch up with him. And he has that sorcerer kind of asking him, you know, at this point in time, we could really easily take Arslan. Why don't you want to move or whatever? And Silver Mask is just like, he doesn't answer him. He's just like, let's go back to Ekbatana. You know, let's go deal with that. And I don't know whether this is because he is now also weighing and mulling over why would his confidant Bahamut be so, you know, just trying to fight for Arslan's life. Maybe both Arslan and Hermes Silver Mask have much more to think about now in answer to this. And of course, once we have this impromptu alliance, you know, this agreement between Rajendra, reluctantly though it may be, with Arslan and all of that, we find calling over to where Gadivi, his brother, is, that they've gotten that information, that Rajendra is coming for him. You know, they don't know the ins and outs of the scenario, but it's enough for Gadivi to be completely ticked off. And again, it's like the parallels between Andragoras and his brother, now Arslan and Silver Mask. Whether or not they are brothers or they are cousins remains to be seen, but it's still a similar dynamic, you know, scenario. And so Gadivi's like, how stupid could my little brother be? You know, he's really not going to let this ascension to the throne happen. He wants to reclaim it for himself and all this stuff. And you got Gadivi's right-hand man letting the other leg drop, the other foot drop. He's got an inside man, you know, in basically Rajendra's faction that will probably move against him if it looks like it's necessary. And so all of this stuff is absolutely just it's primped most compelling to me in turning the tide against 50,000 soldiers, Sindarin soldiers, and they only topped out at 10,000 on their side, you know. So with all of these things in play, this trifecta of, you know, sort of advantages on the warpath, Heaven's Time, Terrain's advantage, People's Harmony, and putting these two characters together, you know, in various means to put forth this ruse and to turn the tables. It's just, wow, you know, perfect sort of stratagem that Narcissus had concocted, and in a very limited capacity, limited time frame. And he just utilized what they had available to them. And this is where we leave it. You know, this impromptu alliance that spells potential troubles in a whole new direction. You know, so I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 14 of Arslan Senki, if you've seen it, the heroic legend of Arslan. It was a very enjoyable episode for me, especially after the last week when we had that recap episode. I was really just chomping at the bit to see what was going to happen next, and here we are finally with this episode debuted upon us. So yeah, otherwise, I'd love to hear from you, as I say, and that'll be pretty much it for me on this. So I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.